Dr. Vernita Perkins. She's an interdisciplinary psychologist, social scientist, civilization justice advocate, and founder of Omnigi Research, specializing in leadership, effectiveness, meaningful living, organizational culture, and global wellness, with over a decade of experience in corporate cultures and transformational behavioral and mental processes. And in negotiating how we were going to do this, Vernita was talking about really wanting to do more of a process piece than just a presentation. So we are going 90 minutes today, which is the exception. And it's going to be more interactive as we go. Let me just say now, just so in case we lose you at the end, next month on November 20th, we're going to have Amber Kelly, and she's got a fascinating topic as well. Traditional nonprofits are not today's solutions. And she's in Cincinnati, and she published that wonderful editorial that SCRA posted about a month ago. So let me turn it over to Vernita, and I think we're going to have an exciting hour and a half.
Yes, good morning. Some of you getting close to good afternoon. I'm glad you're all here. I'm very excited to do this, and I'm going to jump right into sharing my screen. Let's see here. Did I do it? There we go. All right. So can everybody see the screen? I think we're getting.
Yep.
I'll just assume we're getting, okay, we got
it.
Okay, good. All right. So, sorry, I'm just kind of setting myself up here. All right, there I can see all your beautiful faces. So welcome to Becoming Community. And I'm gonna ask everyone now, and since we have such a large number, we decided if you'll go ahead and just put your introduction in the chat. Obviously your name will be in there, but if you can put where you're located, and then just, a little tidbit about yourself, maybe why you came here today, and then if there's something that you're working on, or, a little short sentence bio. And I'll just let everybody take a deep breath and do that. And then I'll let you know, so today's agenda will be this welcome, then the attendees doing your introductions in the chat. And then we'll start exploring community. We'll look at understanding purpose, and then we'll do a resource and empowerment. So as it was noted in the description, this is going to be really experiential. So while we're doing introductions in the chat, if I can just have everybody just kind of adjust in your seat or wherever you're sitting, whatever's comfortable, maybe stretch it out a little bit, and then take a deep breath in for me and release. And let's just do another deep breath in. Fill in those lungs, and then release again. Let the air, just like a balloon, just totally deflating. And then one more deep breath in. Fill your lungs all the way. In the grade school, when they told you take one more deep breath and one more, and hold it there for a second and then release. So part of the reason why we do breathing exercises like this is obviously it gets the brain fired up. And as practitioners and academics ourselves, it's kind of hard sometimes for us to do the self-care and to do the self-reflection and do the work on ourselves. So we want to make sure that we get those spots to do that today, so that everyone has that. And then also, what I wanted to do was just make sure that, sorry, we're going ahead. So if you have questions or you have something to share, you're bursting to share it, feel free to, get my attention, interrupt, pop your mic on, because this is really, we want this really to be experiential. So feel free to kind of jump in if something strikes you, if you have a question, or if you just something strikes you at all. All right, so let's look at community. And as community practitioners, I think and even, you know, community scholars and people who work in community. I think sometimes we can get far away in the work we do from what it is that we really do. So we wanted to take a minute just to kind of look and explore what community is. So what does community mean to you? And I'll ask each of you to think about that. What does it actually mean to you when you say you're a community psychologist, when you work in community, when you think of community, when we talk about it in this global craziness we're experiencing right now? What does that actually really mean? So the actual definition, and it comes in a myriad of variations, is a group of people living in the same locality and under the same government. And let me ask, I'm gonna pick on you, Nicole, and ask you to read the second bullet and the third bullet.
Okay. A unified body of persons, individuals with common interests living in a particular area.
And then let me see, do I have a volunteer or should I snag somebody? Anybody want to volunteer? Yes? Okay, Dawn, please give us the last bullet there.
With a common characteristic or interest living together within a larger society.
So that's our basic definition for community. And then if you apply that to what's going on in the world today, it seems in many spaces that we're not exactly acting like community. So it's a revelation. We're also seeing systemic situations, systemic structures, systemic isms. And in those, we're not seeing any levels of community. We're just seeing hierarchies, capitalism, patriarchy, all the things that we've been discussing. So when we look at community, what do we really see? Common interests, right? Diverse individuals, and even in communities where there's a lot of homogeneity, we still see diversity in individuals. Various social identities, whether we self-identify or whether society identifies us, right? Diverse thinking and ideas, shared decision-making. We see inclusion, or we hope to see inclusion, engagement, and often a common purpose or a common agenda. So now we're going to move into the breakout. And what I'd like you guys to do in the breakout, if you can discuss what community is to you. So we'll just take a second here. And Jean, I think, I'm trying to see our total number here. Okay, so Jean's gonna try to break us out into about.
I'm gonna break you out into groups of 4 to 5. Does that sound good, Vernita?
Yeah, 4 to 5 is good. It's only going to be 10 minutes, so you guys, I'll ask that you share the space, and make sure that, you know, like, use the time to think as well as like contribute. So as Jean's preparing that, what is community to you? What does it mean based on the definition we just said, based on some of the way we can see community, and be free to express what, even if it isn't on what I set up here and what the questions that I put out. Allow yourself to engage, kind of step outside of whatever boundaries you know, or what you learned in grad school, or what you think you know about community, and just kind of try to see what it actually really means, like what community really means to you, to your environment, when you're, as you're, you know, looking at your work. So does anybody have any questions as we move into that? So welcome back, everyone. How was that? Can give me thumbs up or yeah. Did you discover some new things that you hadn't thought about, or a new way of seeing things? Yeah. Yes, nod heads. Okay, so we'll just have open discussion now, and I'm gonna say, please, answer what is community to you, and then also our second surprise question, who are you in community? Yeah, so please feel free to open your mics, and we'll just make this an engaging opportunity.
Can I start with a request that Gloria finish what she was saying in our small group, because it's fascinating, and then it was like, and so in conclusion, click.
Yes, Gloria, please.
So what I was saying was, everyone that comes to a community is very different. Everyone is very unique. And in order for us to actually, make a connection in a community and have one community, we have to bring in everyone that's like-minded from the community into the entire community or multiple communities in order to sync a community, to have a community. And you can't do that at all without bringing every party in. So that right now that's the singular most important thing to me when you're trying to develop a community or enhance a community or be a part of a community. You have to understand the multiple communities within the community to classify yourself as having a united community.
And that was a response to my asking the question, is it really possible to have a united community where all our communities are one?
Yeah. And it's just time for me to answer that question in a nutshell. I think so, as long as we're bringing all the parties, somebody that's representing all the communities. And I would say more than somebody, but many people from multiple communities to do that. It takes work.
One thing that struck me is the fact that I have different communities, and in some I've been more insular in terms of who I am willing to interact with, and in others I have to broaden because of the purpose of the community. So it's kind of the purpose of the community or the need that it's meeting or the realm that it's in can sometimes dictate membership or what the boundaries are.
Our group talked a lot about sort of the ecological levels of community, which is kind of what Susan is sort of talking about, though not exactly, but how, you're both part of a family community, which is nested inside of a neighborhood community, which is nested inside of a larger community. And, the roles that you take when you are thinking about specifically taking care of the larger community, especially around COVID, those activities or behaviors or interactions or affinities are a little bit different than they would be within, a smaller, more nested area. And we also talked a little bit about how politics and other influences are potentially trying to define community in ways that we wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with defining it.
So I shared in the group that I found when I was younger, community was separate for me. So community was that other space where there was volunteering and stuff. And that didn't come from my family, but that came from the socialization I got, like from school and from faith-based communities and from the media, that it was this other word, the word community. So it always had a connotation of something sort of an obligation, a volunteer obligation. But as I worked with OmniG and worked with people and really worked on creating a space that is inclusive and sort of the ideal of what we want, my view about community changed. So, so embracing it and using the term and relanguaging it from like global neighborhood to global community helped me reevaluate that as well. Anybody else?
Our group talked about, we were in the same group, but our group, I think a lot of us were coming from orientations that I think were pretty collectivist now that I kind of think back, because we really were thinking of community in terms of people who care for each other, people that, and out of that caring for each other, using, you know, resources that you have at your disposal to help each other do all that you can, because you want everybody to be at their best and to have everything that they need. And so we talked about that, talked about rituals like around food, and that intimacy and how meaningful things like that can be. And we also began to kind of touch upon how that definition or viewpoint of community can sometimes be at odds with physical definitions of community, like you're sharing a location or you're sharing a space with multiple people, and they might not necessarily care about you, and they might not necessarily have the same values as you. And so what to do with those two kind of very different but very valid definitions and forms of community.
Yeah, I think that like it says a lot, or similar to some of the stuff we were talking about in our group about how there's this need for like that shared emotional connectedness with the folks that you're in community with. And that makes me think that we use the term community a lot when we aren't actually talking about communities. You know, because I think about there's lots of quote unquote communities who do harm to each other. And if you had a shared emotional connectedness or that empathy and you want the best for everybody, that wouldn't happen. Or if it did, then the harm would be treated differently, right? Like the way that you respond to harm and you work through harm would look different. I think this is based a lot too off of the things we've been talking about in the Our Storians group. So plug for Our Storians, which I'm sure Vernita will talk about. You know, is like there's a lot of academic communities or research communities that people are involved in that are very dangerous and harmful for people and perpetuate a lot of harm. And so if we as community psychologists can't even be in community with each other, then how are we supposed to create communities for others?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll build on what Kayla said to answer your second question, Vernita, which I think was about what's the role that we play, which was something that kind of, actually, it's funny, I was talking about this yesterday with a colleague about like, if you consider a workplace or a community with a family structure, what's your role in the family? It's like, that's one lens that you could, you know, are you the nurturing aunt or are you the rogue sibling? You know, like, so we could go there. The one I was thinking of for myself is a little bit more functional, in that, you know, I find that I cross a lot of different communities all the time, and I'm constantly in the role of connecting the dots or, you know, networking people or ideas or other, you know, different communities together or knitting threads together. And then often tend to find myself in mediating roles when there's conflict. Which, you know, we could tie that back to my family history. Well, how did I get to be that person? But so, you know, to start us down that second question track, you know, a few things to think about with our roles.
I've been doing this a long time, and I don't think of myself as creating communities. I think of myself as entering communities and then having to learn from the community what I might contribute that's of value to help change things.
I was thinking about how hard it is to bring communities together. I had the privilege of creating community coalitions in small rural areas and doing it for over a decade. And we would struggle. I mean, the human service people and the clergy, and those were the sort of folks who were in the room. And then we went to really reach out to grassroots folks, and you do that, but you'd only get some of every camp, and it takes a lot of time. Even in the community piece I was talking about here in my little town of 1,700, we have 550 people on a community listserv out of, you know, 1,700, which is enormous. But we don't get certain people who don't, you know, who don't feel they're part of the regular community. You know, the people who are more politically one way or another. And so we're working on it, but it's a huge effort. And so I think when we say let's get everybody together in one room and talking about one thing, really hard ever in this country, and now really, really hard with being told you're all different and you should be fighting with each other. So it's an interesting, like, you know, our dream of everybody being in the room and working things out together is our dream, and we should always go for it, but damn hard.
I kind of said in our group that I think one of the things that's missing, if you think about network analysis, is that bridging isn't allowed anymore. Like if you're trying to bridge, then you're talking to the enemy and what you're a traitor. And so we're all stuck in these little bonded networks, which isn't getting us as far as we'd like, because all of those shared interests don't get discussed. And we're too busy, I think, talking about the non-shared interests, which I'm, you know, finding community hard and hard to admit. Sometimes I'm a community psychologist because I feel like, boy, we haven't got it figured out, have we? We have work to do. We're not putting ourselves out of business. So that's the good news.
Yeah, I agree. And working in social services, just trying to blend the community of organizations that actually support, you know, the working poor, the homeless, the, you know, the poor, the impoverished. It's a huge challenge trying to bring those communities together who actually have the support systems to bring these families out of their situations. And it always revert back to one thing. It's always reverting back to the big dollar. You know, no, it's I'm taking it from this budget, or they can't do this, you know, how it's allocated. And we're talking about, you know, the hurting community. You know, the very community that we work on behalf of, trying to help them out of systemic situations, and the people who have the ability to do it is the part of the community who is not quite interested in having bigger conversations. So that's I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so words that have come up are caring, this separation, belongingness. What does that look like if we pull ourselves out of academy and practice and put ourselves as the human beings back into community? What does that look like, right? So we know that classism and all the isms are, you know, set up to like separate us. But what is it that brings us back into the community consciousness? And again, not from academy or practice, but from your space as a human being. Like what is belongingness? What is appealing about community for you? And then again, anybody just chime in, please.
Although the isms separate us, but they do make up some communities as well, unfortunately, correct? And I was thinking even when Tom said a while ago in the call, having everyone as one community, would this not, I'm thinking, I don't have an idea, but my thoughts were, wouldn't this diminish some of the diversity and the beauty of how different we all are? And then another thought is, okay, if we're all one community, we will still have the different roles, and having the different roles or different levels of attachment and detachment from the community. Being part of a community doesn't mean that I will be an active member, or I will be a contributor, or I will cherish the community. So is it actually putting everyone in a community, or working on the sense of community of the people within these either smaller communities or as big as the community is? So.
And here's the thought to add to that. What if we already are one big community? What if we already are that, and we are then operating in, you know, moving almost like sort of a living entity, like an amoeba, like moving into spaces where we need to be connecting, belongingness, caring, what we said around food, and all this constant, you know, fluid movement. And that because in our human biological capacity, we maybe can only take in a certain space at a time, we see separation. But what if we're actually all in this greater community, always operating like the organs in your body, right? The heart, the lungs, we consider it still all the body, but each one has to do its part. And without the heart, the lungs, and everything working together, there is no human body, right?
I absolutely love that you said that, Dr. Perkins, because that's actually where I was thinking as Hannah was speaking, or Hannah, I'm not sure how to say your name. And I'm curious of what this would look like, and really thinking about me as a human entering this space and being in a community, like a global community. I think that for me, at least, what's most important is kind of the non-judgmental acceptance of our differences and celebration of those differences. As well as, and like thinking like everyone has their function, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, just like all the parts of a body, to use your metaphor. So like I may be a really great lung cell and someone else may be a really good calf muscle cell, but we're both still very valuable and worthy, and we can respect those differences while still working together towards a common goal. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
One of the things that Dr. Perkins and I have talked about before is my upbringing was incredibly individualistic as opposed to community minded. And something that was sort of instilled in me that I battle to this day is sort of a fear of getting too engaged in other people's business. Like that's their business and I shouldn't be invested, like I shouldn't be inserting myself into their business. But in order for a community, large, small, with different roles, whatever, to function, we have to make that empathy muscle bigger than the fear muscle, bigger than or more developed than the I shouldn't get involved in other people's business. And that is and I don't know, that could be a regional thing, that could be a white girl thing. I'm not really sure. But that was how I was brought up, was if you see someone who is unhomed on the street, you need to avoid that person because that's their business and they need to take care of their business, as opposed to maybe you should check and see if that person needs help. Maybe you should actually insert yourself into other people's business to make sure that harm isn't being done. And I think, the evolution of my sort of journey to where I am today is a big part of that is it's okay to be involved. It's okay to care about other people and to want to be a part of their business, and that you don't have to protect yourself and your family to the point of isolation, which is what my family did. My family was protectionist to the point of isolation. So I would say that's a big revelation to me, and one that I'm constantly thinking about is, how do I make that empathy muscle big enough to overcome the discomfort of my own upbringing?
And here's a little thought to add on to that, Nicole. Then because maybe there is the fear of opening up and being so invested in community, because we know when we're vulnerable, we could get hurt, we could get challenged, we could be made to feel not worthy. But here's another thought, a lot of the languaging that's going around about many hands make easy work, when there's enough of us, you can always tap out and take a break. A lot of us have had those conversations over the months, that the more present, there's that support. And so if you think about hanging out with your family during the holidays, and especially if you have cooking traditions or things like that, if everybody's in that kitchen, then everybody can get out of there pretty quickly, right? Right. So you have that balance. So if everybody, and so, and I know in my family, it was like, okay, you chop onions, you chop celery, you do that. And when you were done, you could go do what you wanted or be invested more. But having that investment actually can feel like release, as opposed to the stress. And like you said, that empathy muscle can grow. So any more thoughts? And we'll give this about like 2 more minutes, and then I'd like to move to our next experiential. But anybody pressing to share something?
This is Steve. I know we often in academic circles can get a bit abstract, but if there's a way, even at some points throughout our conversation, to bring it back to what we have right now, the two major epidemics or pandemics, COVID and racism in the United States as a community. I think it makes it much more real because, you know, we know my children's safety is dependent on my neighbor's children's ability to wear a mask when they go to school, and that may not happen next week when they go to school. And, you know, my children's ability to keep the Black children safe and the brown children safe is not really seen by my children as their responsibility. So I don't know if there's a way to maybe bring it to that, because those are real pandemics that we have right now, racism and the COVID, and they're connected. And the abstract becomes more, I don't know, real.
So thank you for that. We did not plan that, but thank you, Steve, for that, because our next comment is about self-reflection. So this is an opportunity for us now to ask a couple of questions in our self-reflection. There's a picture of the planet there because this is our community. This whole planet is our community.
Are you trying to share? Are you trying to share?
Yeah, I am. Is it not working?
It's not sharing.
Okay, let's see what happened. I think, okay, is that better?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so self-reflection and our role in it. How do you see yourself? What's your purpose? And what is your purpose in community? And so, as several of you have just mentioned, what does that look like? How do we see ourselves? And we won't, we're not going to go back into a breakout because we're doing really good having this open conversation. And so continue to really chime in if you're thinking that's good too. It's all part of the process. But let's start answering some of these questions. How do you see yourself when you reflect on that? How do you see yourself in community? And again, thinking of the global community, thinking of belongingness, caring, that connection, the separation we talked about. What is your purpose, and what is your purpose in community? And again, global community, your smaller community, but stepping away from our need to, you know, go into scholarship or go into practice thinking. We're back on ourselves and looking at that self-reflection.
Oh, I love this. Do you mind if I go?
Absolutely, please.
So how do I see myself? I see myself as the connector. I see myself as the bridger. My purpose is to ensure that every person in need, and as I mentioned, I work with the homeless community. My purpose is to ensure that each and every homeless family, the working poor, those are impoverished, receive a very good, thorough assessment of who they are, who their family is, what they need, to put together a very comprehensive plan for them so that they could achieve self-sufficiency and not only survive, but sustain. And this is numerous components. And we're talking about educational, behavior health, all types of things, education tools where we're broadening out from just 2 and 4 year degrees and high school diplomas and GEDs and things like that. These things that when we ask questions, and sometimes it takes a little while to have a real conversation and getting, what people really want to do, because many of them never had that question asked. But just to have a real dialogue to find out who that person is. And my purpose in the community is to ensure that I touch each and every organization within that community, company within that community, and say, hey, you have something that we need. And how do I connect these people, these organizations who work with these people to you so that we can build a healthy, strong community, starting with the community of the family and then the global community as a whole.
So now, Gloria, if I had to ask you, to play yourself on yourself, again, because it's back to you, what's your purpose? Not your work purpose, not your practice purpose, not your community psychologist purpose. What is your purpose as Gloria in community, and what is your purpose? Or
That is my purpose in me. My
Okay.
purpose and to me is, my purpose to me, for me, is to make sure that I am getting the best thing for myself and for my family. I want to make sure that I am not only surviving, but thriving. So I'm going to look for everything that is going to support me as an individual and for my family. And I use that same insight for me, for my community. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's no perfect way to answer it. You're answering from your soul and from your truth. Anyone else sharing what your purpose is?
I'll go. Hi everyone. Again, Dawn. Shout out from North Carolina.
Yay.
So yeah, I mean, these are hard questions. I just want to put that up there because, you know, I've been quiet because it's interrogating me. So that's really my purpose, right? So I've been trying to interrogate aspects of self in terms of how I have internalized this concept of a hierarchy of human value, right? And part of that interrogation, that intra-interrogation, also requires that I interrogate how I interact and relate to others. It is also about how I interrogate the very system that has programmed and created the scripts in which I buy into that continue that. So for me, you know, at first I was thinking some esoteric, like God and making this connection, but I'm like, this is what I've been working on for a long time. And part of that is all connected to the work that I'm, you know, doing, you know? So my purpose is a constant interrogation of how my own thinking, how my very own practice and the institutions that I'm a part of and the ways in which I am dismantling this concept of hierarchies. Because even the concept of community, you know, I started thinking about that. It's like, yeah, you know, those are academic definitions, but part of the work is we have to blur the very idea of a boundary system and the ways in which we say, well, this community has to look like this and this community has to look like that, and these characteristics that again places us across into this hierarchy, right? And I was like, can we have community and it's completely, you know, horizontal, non-vertical relationships and all of that. So not to make a long story short, you know, long and keep going on and on because I can. That is what I would like to say is my purpose. So connecting that interrogation of self, the intra self, thinking about how that relates to the relationships, the communities, quote unquote, that I'm working for and within, and also the very system, right? A constant interrogation and bringing in my faith and other ways in which I need to replenish that aspect of my work.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, thank you. It's a lot to think about, right? As Dawn said, it's a lot to think about. What's your purpose?
It's actually, yeah, it's a really, really hard question. And I'm wondering if some of the relative silence on the call speaks to, I'll speak for myself, sort of my privilege in not having to think about that and interrogate it in quite the same way as some others of us who have to fight for their role in the world and purpose in the world. I also think it's a generational thing where there's a part of me that sort of feels like I fought very hard for a long time to figure this out and meet my purpose. And so when you ask about the purpose sort of in the whole world, it does take me back to academic experiences, into a time in my 30s and 30s mostly, where I kind of thought, okay, I can make a difference in this big sort of global issue, and then being disappointed that I couldn't as an individual, and sort of even within a community, like my alliances were in communities that didn't have the power to make the change. And so as sort of, how do I see myself being really impacted by disappointments in the world, but that make me think about the fact that I get to retreat into those disappointments. I have always said about my work in Afghanistan that the difference was that they didn't have the luxury of disappointment and I did. And I feel like that's true in so many parts of my life. So I have no answer except this is a very good thing to be reflecting upon. And I thank you for the question, and maybe it'll reignite my finding purpose.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I do know is that by really, and that was part of me asking in the invite for everyone to just put aside whatever belief systems you had, whatever practices or ways you do things, and just try to come in with as open a slate, as open a blank piece of paper as possible, right? To entertain the idea of what community looks like and what being community looks like, and even a little bit deeper, understanding that agenda. So let me pose this to everyone. So in OmniG, we have one agenda, and some of you who have been around or have attended our events, or or participated, or even just had conversations with me, because I'm your sister, Dawn, in being able to talk, because I end up, I think out loud. So one of the things that we looked at in OmniG is us having a soul agenda, and the soul agenda was the good of all, the greater good, the well-being of all, right? And we've been tossing it around for over 5 years now, trying to figure out how does that look. And it has come in so handy this year, because having a soul agenda that works for the good of all, and in that agenda, seeing the world, everything as the greater global community, right? And so we are human, so we occupy a small, 3-foot square space around us, 4-foot square space around us. But in the reality of our consciousness, we have a greater ability, a capacity. We do have a capacity to take in everything and to see things and to be able to process that. And then, like you said, Anne, those of us who live in cultures of luxury have the opportunity to sit and reflect and to think and decide, because we're not just in survival or fight mode, right? But here's something I'll put out to you. Having an agenda that serves the good of all is taking care of yourself. Because if when I wake up every day and I'm asking myself how I can contribute to the world, how I can leave things elevated in my presence and in my departure, right? So when I leave a space, I can leave it elevated. I don't really have to be concerned about myself and the selfishness and the self-absorption that we see in society, especially in the sort of, divisiveness, of some people to divide communities. I don't have to be concerned about that, because if I'm thinking of everything, then I'm part of everything. And, it's a little mind-bending concept at first. And then because we went through, a couple of decades of self-development and a lot of, these, what even us as scientists configure a little out there thinking, it got distorted and misunderstood. But the idea is, like I said, our bodies are that already. So we're walking around little flesh beings packed full of a giant community that is served by a bunch of little tiny communities, right? So we're already there in just our presence as biological beings. But somehow our minds have been, through socialization and mental conditioning and sort of the cult of existence conditioning, we have, and notice I'm changing the language, right? Reframing language. We have pushed ourselves out of this idea that we are connected and into this idea that we are separate. And now in 2020, the entire planet has to realize what many people, I think, realize in the first week or so. Because I remember, once we got laptops sorted out and everything from the work perspective and blah, 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 and cars and trying to figure all that out, I had a pause of going, oh my God, I need other people. I was like, if there's no one else on the planet, I am very screwed, because I can't run a grocery store. I mean, I know how to pump gas, but I don't know how to bring it to the station and plug it into the ground. And all these things, I realized that there are hundreds of thousands of people. So I even took one moment when I was making a sandwich in the kitchen, and I thought, I started thinking of all the people who had to be existing and thriving on this planet on some level to get that sandwich to me. Somebody got the seeds, planted the grain, you know, created the, you know, the processing of the grain, made the bread, blah, blah, blah. I could go on, you guys get the point. And it suddenly occurred to me as I was adding it up in my head, I was like, that had to be almost like 1,000 people to get a sandwich to my table, which I ate in 20 minutes. And then it just came like frighteningly, you know, that, you know, hairs on the back of your neck, your body goes cold for a second when you realize that there is no me without other. And that's not even from a selfish perspective, that's from an inspiring, exciting perspective, because that goes the same for other people. So with this little twist on the perspective, and you know, again, you'll have to keep pushing yourself to go deeper in that thought. And I know sometimes when we get to the edge of a precipice like that, it's like, I'm not doing that. Let me just go get a glass of wine and forget about it, or let me go walk the dog, or let me check out. But we need to check in, because we're community. We are the representation of community. We have to be the beingness of community if we even want anyone else to believe it. And when we, as community practitioners, scholars, psychologists, because many of us, you know, are community psychologists or community psychologists self-identified, right? So we didn't necessarily study it exactly, but it actually is a part of our interdisciplinary work. As Kayla was saying earlier, if we can't believe it, and then we go into communities in our scholarly work and our practice, and then we're doing all of our assessments and trying to figure out, why don't they get this? It's like, because you're not walking it, you know, because we're not being it. So we need to be community. And here's the thing, we need to do it at a level where it's like on autopilot, where it's autonomous, right? Where it just happens. And how we get that way is doing that self-reflection, using the analogy of the body and all the organs that are in there. Pick an analogy that works for you. Make it a, you know, a bowl of soup, whatever you need, but recognize that every breath, we are all connected. So that is why what's going on in the world seems so absurd, right? So even on a selfish level, a personal level, we may be going, nope, nope, these people are bad and I'm good, or these people aren't doing it right, or whatever. But that's not where our essence is. Our essence that makes us who we are, that animates us, gets it that there's no me without the other. So I'll again ask you to look at the screen and see those questions as your takeaway questions. How do you see yourself? What is your purpose? What is your purpose in community? And when I answered it for Omni-G, I had already answered it for myself. Everything I do is for the greater good of all. It has to be. And then I don't have to think about myself, because that's already in play. That's already happening. And the more I did that, the more I moved out of the selfishness and the self-concern and the fear, and found all this opportunity, because it just keeps showing up. But it takes a minute to shift into that. And as Anne was saying, it can be all kinds of social identities, because we are definitely conditioned, especially in the US, to pick a side and stick to it even when it's wrong. And in our stubbornness and our American exceptionalism, which is a disease that has spread all around the world, now we have people all over the world who have this exceptionalism attitude. And it's actually the thing that's strangling us right now. It's the thing that's emptying us out. It's the thing that's destroying us. It's the thing that's making us work, doing duplicative effort and working twice as hard to get zero or to get nowhere, and to feel like, I don't understand why this isn't working. And it's because we've stepped away from being community. We've forgotten to be community. And notice, it has nothing to do with religions. It has nothing to do with nationalities, ethnicities, race. It has nothing to do with that. It is the essence of you as a being. And in the invite, as we said, either you're participating or you're not. And we know when we are, right? So we're participating, and the more you pull any self agenda out and push to the good of all agenda, things start to click, things start to make sense, the dots start to connect. And when you need support, when you need self-promotion, there are plenty of people around who will do it, right? And I can tell you, I can self-promote every single one of you guys here better, easily and effortlessly than any of you can, because I can see the things that imposter syndrome or our other, our self-criticism can't see. So now imagine self-criticism and then selfishness smushed together, trying to be in a human form, operating in the world. And then you've got some of our Congress, our world leaders, heads of corporations, that idea of the conflict that they're holding within, that split that's going on inside of them, where they're trying to do for themselves. And then we see it in the billionaires, right? We see all of these people with a whole lot of money that they can't spend in a lifetime, and their biggest accomplishment is getting a bunch of money, which a 6-year-old could do if you would just push them in the, in that direction. And so where are we being community? Where are we constantly peeling away the things that don't create caring, belongingness? The same way Cleo and Kat and Teresa said in the breakout I was in, where it's just a natural propensity when you get some food together and a couple of plates and some cups and some silverware, it's a natural propensity to feed and to support and share. Where's that? That can be in our daily operation. And if we're doing that community, then whether we're, cradle to grave, whether we're young, old, whatever generation, whatever race, whatever, we're operating, we're pushing through and transcending and operating at a higher level. We're looking at it differently. But it requires self-reflection. And again, in our academic and practice spaces, oftentimes I think when we get to those higher degree levels, we forget that we need to be the student as much as the teacher. We need to be the innocent as much as the wisdom and the knowledge, right? And we need to balance ourselves in those roles. And when we feel overwhelmed, that's the opportunity to get self-reflection and to simplify. So we did a lot of that today, just getting down to just basic questions. What is community, right? And when you saw that question, you're probably like, is she crazy? I'm a community psychologist. Of course I know what community is. But now in deeper reflection, do we, right? So I am going to ask everyone to, to do a little self-discovery when you're looking at what your agenda is and how you are being in community. What is your agenda? How are you being in community? I'll let you ponder on that for just a second. Maybe we'll take a deep breath in and release. We've had a lot going on today. A little deeper breath in and release. And I promise you guys the breathing exercise, like I said, our wellness practitioner is always reminding me of that, because as soon as I breathe, that blood starts flowing and things start, it's just soothing, right? So I'm gonna ask you guys to do that self-discovery. And obviously what we do here today is 90 minutes, but things should and will come up for you in the days to come in other subsequent conversations, and just keep asking. And then also be gentle with yourselves, like, because it's really easy to be hard on ourselves and beat ourselves up, and imposter syndrome and all the other things that we do. When we know what we know, and we know that we are passionately pulled to community, so we're in our right space, we just need to allow ourselves to open up to reframing what that looks like. And if we're calling for the end of systemic isms, if we're calling for a healing of divisiveness and all of that, and we're not willing to reevaluate and reprioritize and self-reflect and discover, then we're still not doing our work being community, right? And a way forward. So on this way forward of being and building community, what are you willing to do to commit to being community? What are you willing to do? What does that look like? And again, please strip away the tendency for your brain to start remembering that research study, or to go back into your practice, or to go back into your mode, or to start going, okay, well, let me get out my, try some, if every, if you always write things down and ponder them, if you always go to the databases and start looking at research, try something different. Go outside and take a walk. Take the dog for a walk. If you don't have a dog, take the neighbor's dog for a walk. Go bake a cake. Go do something you don't normally do. Part of reconditioning our mind into being community is doing that reset. And I'll ask, how many people turn off their phones or turn off their tablets and stuff? Like, just turn it off. Okay, I see a few hands going up. So years ago when I was at another company, the IT guy said to me, he was asking me about turning off my computer, and I go, well, I just put it to sleep, or I just do a restart. And he said, no, when do you shut it down? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then he looked at my phone and he goes, and when do you shut that down? And I was like, never. He says, you never turn it off? And that light bulb went on. I thought, wow, I never. He says, how is your technology supposed to reset? How are we supposed to reset if we don't try something different, if we don't turn it off? And then if you look across the internet and if you read articles, you'll hear this same, what sounds to be the same, but I'm asking you to do it differently. And part of the way we do that in OmniG is we get new tools for practice. So we find different ways. Like I said, if you normally do audiobooks, try reading a book, try breaking it up, and turn off the alarms in your head that are going, well, that's not the way to do it because it takes too long, or I'd never do it like that, or I can't do it like that. Try to break out of that. So we talk about self-care. Do a little bend, a self-care bend, and bend out of the way that you normally do things. Try something different. Try writing with a pen instead of typing all the time. Just break it up. Get those neurons to fire differently, right? And then ask those questions again. And then I challenge you, like in a week, to ask yourself those questions again. The way forward. This is the way forward. Really to start changing from the root, from the source, right? And we're going to hear a lot of garbage in the next couple of weeks. You guys know it. We're going to hear a whole lot more rhetoric. We're going to hear a lot more divisiveness. We're going to hear more things. We're going to see more people die, unfortunately. I've lost a lot of people in my network already, like actually not just gotten sick or gotten COVID, but died. We're going to see a lot more of that, unfortunately. But the way out of this is to start shifting. And the people to do it is community. Anyone who's in community, that's going to be a way forward. And it is not Marxism or socialism or all of those things. We are talking about recreating and redefining and reframing community. And we will say now, my favorite part, call to action, yay. So we probably need to re-language this as well, reframe the language for call to action. So if call to action does not call you to action, then change the name. Call it being fired up, or lighting a match under yourself, or whatever you need to do to reframe that language. But I will now ask, you can either put it in the chat, or you can say it out loud, but we'll just take a breath here. We'll just do a couple of gentle breaths, and then we'll do a pause, and I will ask you to announce your call to action. If you don't have it yet, get close to it, use your purpose. I'm a fixer and a helper, and I know that about myself, that I like to fix and help and heal. So I'm always going to find a way to be in those roles, not because I need it to fuel myself, but because if I don't help and fix and support, I am unfulfilled. Life doesn't have meaning. That's the kind of agenda I'm talking about looking for. That's the kind of agenda, the thing that you're passionate about doing. And it should also be expansive. So that agenda that you have for your life should be able to expand around the globe, right? So just give yourself a breath to reevaluate. We got a lot of smart minds, a lot of intelligence, a lot of visionary savvy on this call. We know that, and we all know how to do it, but we're just challenging ourselves in a different way. So calls to action. And then I saw Dana has joined us. Dana is our OmniG's wellness practitioner, and she's going to give us a little closing meditation. But for right now, let's do a shout out of calls to action.
Well, I'm very moved by the session. And I'm moved by the fact that a lot of people who I admire and love were on the call, and we're talking with each other as a community, which I don't know ever happens. And it seems to me that we need to leave from this and figure out how to do this more often. Because I have just great appreciation for the people, for the chat box. And, you know, I may be in meetings or exchanges with a lot of these people, but I've never had this experience. And we started off saying, you know, what's our community? And community psychology, SCRA should be a community. And it rarely is, except, you know, if every couple of years we can get into a geographic spot together. So I think this is an experience we should grow from.
My call to action is to continue with dialogue. I don't think that issues can be resolved. I don't think that issues can be brought to the forefront unless we have dialogue. It's impossible to look at someone and say, hey, I know exactly what's wrong with you, because you don't. So in order to get to the root of problems, you have to start having conversations with yourself and being real about helping people. Being a community psychologist, just being myself from as long as I can remember, I've always had an interest in trying to help people resolve their issues. And I take that wholeheartedly. I'm very passionate about that. So I'm very verbal. I love to talk to people and I love meeting people. And that in itself is my passion and my call to action. To get to this work, you gotta have dialogue. And so I'll continue to talk to people.
Thank you, Gloria. So you'll commit to conversations. I love it. Anyone else want to shout out their commitment or their call to action? Or even if you want to just put it in the chat, that's good too.
I already put it in the chat, but I don't mind stating it again.
I'll go.
Yes, please.
I will commit to continue to raise awareness about self-care, both within myself and those around me, my family, my students, my colleagues, just anyone I meet on the street, well, mostly virtually lately.
Thank you, Ola. And I'm glad you said self-care, because self-reflection is self-care. Having a sole agenda is self-care, because that's how we, you know, allow ourselves to be committed to that one thing. Anyone else want to do a shout out of your call to action?
For me, my call to action is to initiate connection, because I feel like sometimes I get so busy and I want to connect with people and I'm usually waiting on being invited, but initiating invitation into community a lot more would be my call to action.
Thank you, Cleo. And again, I like what Tom said. Sometimes we can be in a room with each other and not even see each other. So today we're seeing each other for real. Sometimes, like you said, even years of knowing somebody, maybe for the first time, we're actually seeing each other. So if nothing else, we can commit to seeing each other and commit to talking, communicating, and sharing transparently and honestly. Yeah. Anyone else want to do your shout out to call to action?
Well, I said that I would commit to leaning into the discomfort, to every day, to lean into that discomfort and to use that discomfort as an opportunity to do a thing today. And, You know, like I can even like in my head see the missed opportunity I had this morning. And I think I might go at lunch and go fix the thing that I had the opportunity to do this morning and I didn't. So I want to lean into that discomfort. And I want, as a part of that call to action, to be taking my family with me, making sure that my children live in a world that is better than the one that I grew up in.
I think the one thing I will do differently is people don't realize this about me, but I'm extremely introverted. And so when I'm not working, I just always want to be alone, and I never call anybody. I don't call people. I don't reach out, and I don't set up social interactions. And I need to start doing that. I enjoy them when I actually do them, but I don't initiate them. And I think that's something I need to change. It's just hard.
But you're making the commitment in front of us, and we're hearing you. And we know Gloria likes to talk, and so do I. So you already got people that you know like to talk or like to converse. And then there are many people who like to listen too. So we'll ask those people who like to listen to also speak up, because all that listening has filled your brain and your consciousness with a lot of yummy, good stuff. So you need to share. Right?
I almost feel called out because my commitment was to listen more, even though I do like to listen mostly. So I'm going to challenge myself to also speak of the connections that I think about and share my ideas with the communities that I'm in.
Excellent. Excellent. And then I'm also going to suggest to each of you to take this back to your family, to your network, right? As Teresa just said, and engage them, and then have this dialogue with them, have this conversation. We're recording it, so there's that advantage as well, so you can listen to it again. And I would also encourage you to listen to it again, maybe in a week or two, when you've had time to digest and process on it, right? Because we know that brain is an amazing thing with those neurons that keep rebuilding and recreating themselves and adjusting. And so it's there, it's in us. And maybe we need to be more just mobilized, right, in general, because that's part of that lethargy in our society of like, I'll let somebody else deal with it. And like Nicole was saying, hey, just deal with it yourself. Reach out and say hi. And then I'm wondering how many people are introverted, because Susan, I'm the same way. I'm super shy, super introverted. Everybody always laughs when I say that and they roll their eyes, and I'm like, no, it's true. It's true. You just see me in spaces where I'm being my passion. I'm being the helper, the fixer, the supporter, the visionary. But that's not always, that hasn't always been true. And I shudder to think all those, like Nicole said, those missed opportunities where I was too shy to speak up or share what was going on in my head. Thank you, brilliant brain, staying quiet, right? We need those brains to be talking to each other now and sharing, and not just out of COVID desperation and quarantine boredom, but actually because it is who we are. We are a community. So anyone else for a call to action?
I wanted to add to your point of the introverted. It's not only the introverted as not wanting to talk to others, but thinking that these others are like superstars that you can talk to, and in reality it's just like, oh no, we're all normal people. Yeah. Like a lot of people on this call are people who I think are everyone I think is a superstar, but I think how we put these mental barriers that we think, oh, who am I to talk to someone like that, is adding to this introversion, I think, and I fall into that a lot. So yeah.
And it adds to the divisiveness unconsciously because it creates that separation. And as we've been saying all this call, there is no separation. Sorry for anybody who thought there was. We're all connected. Tough. It's too late. It's already happened. It was happening when you were born, and it's going to happen till you die. And then even then, right? So we're always connected. So we have to just get over the idea that we're not. So in the interest of call to action, and this is so not a plug because OmniG, we don't do that. We just try to do the work in the world. Here is, we're doing these accountability, and it came off of a couple of ecos that I attended where they said, hey, or conferences where they're like, let's have a call to action. And then they held my feet to the fire. And I was like, whoa, ouch, that flame hurts. And then I was like, but let's do it. So one of OmniG's call to action is to reframe language, because we know that's been historically traumatizing, and it freezes us sometimes when we hear things or we see behaviors that stick us, get us stuck. So on the 31st, we'll be renaming it from Halloween to Call to Action Accountability Day. And we'll be meeting then. And I think we're going to go ahead and try to do a recording of that. So if anybody already has a commitment. And then you can get more information if you go to the site. Again, you guys know me, I'm not a plugger or whatever. So, but we do like to make sure people have the information. So I want to thank you everyone for joining us today for Becoming Community. And then now I just want to say, if anybody has a closing thought, chime in, and then otherwise we will have Dana taking us out in with some breath work and some healing consciousness for our call to actions and for being community. So thank you for joining us in being community. I really appreciate everyone being here and really diving in.
Thank you, Vernita. This was a wonderful experience for everybody.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I apologize. I stepped in late, Vernita. I had class, but this last half has been phenomenal. So I did put something in the chat about commitment, but that was only one thing, because then I started thinking about
You were like, I got
10
more.
other things. Right. All kinds of stuff. So yeah.
Now we have something to look forward to for the next couple of weeks.
There
And
you
next
go.
couple of months.
Yeah.
We've got our
Yeah.
actions
Awesome.
to do.
Yeah,
So thank
cool.
you again, you
Yeah.
guys. Good. And then, it's being recorded. So you'll get to see it again. And then you guys know my email. Everybody knows how to contact me. You can always reach out. And much like Gloria, I'll talk anytime, anywhere. I'm on the West Coast, but I'm up all hours.
Perfect.
And so now Dana.
Before you do that, a big
Pardon?
thank you to Vernita,
Yes.
and a plug for our next November 20th conversation with Amber Kelly. Traditional nonprofits are not today's solutions, and a real big thank you, not just for the content, but for the whole sense of process and the whole sense of community that you built here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so now we'll have Dana take it away.
Thank you, Vernita. Thank you, everyone. Just want to take a moment to close out this time together, just by turning inwards, but in a way that we can also still connect with each other. So I invite you, wherever you are, if you're seated, just sit back in your chair, get comfortable. And if it feels right, allow your eyes to close. And as you find a comfortable posture, you just might roll the shoulders back a few times, circle the shoulders up to the ears, and down the back. Just feeling the movement of the shoulders moving through space, and then circling the opposite way, roll the shoulders forward, up to the ears, and then down. And then slowly letting the shoulders fall softly away from the ears again. Rest the hands in your lap. And together, all as one unit, let's take 3 deep breaths. So taking a deep breath in through the nose, breathe down deep into the belly, up into the lungs, the heart space. And then exhale smoothly, slowly, really draw the exhale out. Let the exhale pour from the body. And twice more, taking a deep, full breath in, expanding the rib cage in all directions. And long, smooth exhale, let it go. Feel how the body releases on the out breath. Another deep, full breath in, maybe the deepest you've taken today. Really fill the whole body with air. And exhale, let it go. Let the air flow. And then allowing your breath to be natural again. And as we say, let the body breathe you. So let the breath come naturally in and out of the nose, all on its own. And then see if you might bring your attention into your hands. So bring all your awareness and focus into the hands, feeling the palms of the hands, where they make contact with each other, or maybe your lap, feeling the tops of the hands. And now as we say, feeling the hands from the inside out, take a few moments here. Can you feel the aliveness coursing through your hands? You might notice tingling or temperature, sensation. But can you feel the aliveness flowing through the hands right now? Even though we might be still looking in our bodies, can you feel there's so much aliveness, movement, and change happening in the hands and the body every second? Then it's this same aliveness, intelligence powering this breath in and this breath out of the nose. So bring your awareness now right around the edge of the nostrils or the upper lip. And just feel how the body knows how to breathe you, how life knows how to live you. This same intelligence, all breathing us in. The same oneness, all breathing us out. All of us, made of the earth, of stardust, all from the same place. And so together, as best you can, feel and follow these next 3 cycles of breath moving in and out of your nose. Natural breath comes in. Natural breath comes out. No matter who or where you are, we're all doing this breathing thing. Or really, we're all being breathed. And just like you can trust this aliveness flowing through your body, and the hands and the breath, all through your skeleton and the cell, you can continue to trust this life knows how to live you. And when you take these moments to come into stillness, you can really hear maybe that inner voice that only you can, that will guide and direct you exactly to where you need to be, who you need to serve. And together, taking a final deep breath in, take another deep breath in, fill all the way to the top, feel the fullness. And exhale, let it go, release. And when you're ready, reopening your eyes, coming back to your day, back to seeing all these beautiful faces. Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
Wishing you a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day, great weekend.
Thanks
Bye.
you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Vernita. Yep. Take care. Talk soon.